Welcome back to another episode of Palisade Radio. This is your host, Colin Cattell. Returning guest on the program with us today is Jeff Berwick. He is the founder and publisher of The Dollar Vigilante. Jeff, welcome back to the program. Always happy to have you.
Thank you, Colin.
I don't think we had a chance to do an interview or talk since the Anarchapulco event, which went down smoothly, and in fact your attendance was way up from the year prior. We do our own conferences here at Palisade, but your conferences are on a scale of their own, probably 10 or 20 times as many people as we have, and I know just how much work goes into that. So congratulations on pulling that off without a hitch. You had like Ron Paul there and G. Edward Griffin and a bunch of big names that were pretty spectacular. So what's kind of your review of the conference after it's been done and you've had some chance to absorb it all?
Well, it exceeded even my expectation. Was not expecting, last year, for example, in 2017, we had about 500 people show up, and this year was over 1,500 people. We actually sold it out, so we weren't expecting that at all. I think the crypto's doing quite well in the last year. Definitely did not hurt that, as a lot of people who come to Anarchapulco are really into cryptocurrency. In fact, one of our entire days at the conference is called Cryptopulco for that reason, and for the last 2 years it's been sponsored by Bitcoin.com. So it's definitely got a lot of crypto-related stuff, and with 2017 being the biggest year in crypto ever, and probably forever will be in terms of percentage gains, definitely that did not hurt our attendance. But just in general, the whole idea of Anarchapulco is about freedom and liberty, and that is really starting to catch on. People are starting to figure out that the current political systems, the current everything systems, the financial system, monetary system run by central banks, they're all scams. They're not there to help you. Voting is not going to save you from anything. And people are starting to figure that stuff out. So I guess all of that combined really has kind of hit Anarchapulco like a tidal wave, with people coming from across the world this year. And we're already well advanced into planning for 2019, and we're expecting probably 3,000, 4,000, or 5,000 people, probably be another sellout. And actually, we've already signed a number of big names, which I can't quite announce yet. We'll probably be announcing them next week. That will probably blow a lot of people's minds. There's a lot of people gravitating towards this entire space in general. As I pointed out, people are getting really tired. They've tried George Bush. That didn't work out too well. They pulled off 9/11. They tried Barack drone bomber, who they gave him the Nobel Peace Prize. He didn't have one day of peace his whole presidency. That didn't work out too well. He also put the government into about 100% more debt in his 8-year time period. Then they said, let's go the opposite way. Let's go to Donald Trump. He says he's an outsider, and he's going to rein in the government and drain the swamp. Well, he's actually had the biggest deficits ever and has no plans of reducing them. In fact, he just recently said that by 2027, they'll balance the budget, which is what everyone always says. They always put it out about 10 years so that everyone can forget about it, because it's not going to happen. And then he continued to refill the swamp. It's all Goldman Sachs people, Morgan Stanley people. It's all the same people. It's all a big game, a big charade, and people are starting to figure it out. They're starting to figure out, okay, this left-right thing is just a big game. Nothing ever changes in the end, and because of that, a lot of people are gravitating towards freedom, liberty, things like anarchy and volunteerism, which is what Anarchapulco is all about.
Well, Jeff, the sentiment of Anarchapulco attendees was certainly one very positive of movement towards a more free society, a more free financial system, a lot of that based on crypto and blockchain. Now, at the time of the conference, crypto was still much the hype on, call it the mainstream or the retail side of things. Since then, of course, it's pulled back a bit. That's probably a healthy pullback. But what are you seeing, since your pulse is so close to everything, in terms of people actually adopting the blockchain, adopting crypto? Is this still a growing movement? Are you afraid that so much money rushed in and we're going to have a big flush out that it's going to hurt things in the near term? What's your feeling on things?
Yeah, I don't think you can stop this movement. It's continuing to grow massively. This, what you call a pullback here, Bitcoin hit nearly 20,000 in late December, and I actually put out a number of videos. In fact, I was on your show. People can go back, and the name of the show was "It's Time to Take Profits from Cryptos." I forget the exact name, but it was something like that, and rotate them into gold and gold stocks. And so many people really lambasted me for that video. They said that gold will never go up, and that cryptos will never go down again. And that it was actually literally 2 days after that Bitcoin hit 20,000. We're now at $6,000 approximately. $7,000. So it's down about 65%. And in fact, the entire crypto space as well is down about 65% from its highs. But this is definitely not taken away at all from the movement of what was going on. What happened, in my opinion, is there's been people like myself into these things since 2011, 2012, 2013, very early adopters, some even before me, people like Roger Ver in 2010. Anyone who got in around 2010 did very well. Obviously, it was trading at literally pennies at the time, if it was even trading at all. And then a number of us started building a lot of things, and actually the ecosystem grew dramatically up until about last year. And then what happened was the rest of the world started to realize what was going on, and a lot of your sort of what you call the dumb money, just your average retail sort of person who heard about Bitcoin on TV and wanted to buy some all of a sudden, they started all buying in fall of last year because Bitcoin was really only around $2,000 last summer. And right after that, all of a sudden the mainstream media really picked up on it. It started getting the buzzwords everywhere, and that's what really took off. And it was a lot of retail investors buying all the way up to $20,000. So they really needed to get washed out of this market, and they now have been for the most part, now that we're back down to about 7,000. But this has not stopped the movement whatsoever. In fact, I go to cryptocurrency conferences regularly. I turn down literally dozens or hundreds every year. I just cannot possibly humanly, unless there's some sort of cloning machine available, go to any of these things. But I do go to a fair amount. For example, I'm going to be in Liberland, which I'm actually a diplomat of. It's an anarcho-capitalist country in Europe, just near Serbia and Croatia, for a crypto event there actually later this week called the D10E conference. Then after that, I'm going to a Libertopia, which is a freedom conference in San Diego. Then after that, I'm going to the Philippines for a cryptocurrency conference called Boracay Blockchain on the Beach. But there's literally dozens of crypto conferences every week. I just came back from one in Kenya called the World Blockchain Summit in Nairobi, Kenya. So there's tons going on. And what I've heard from a lot of the main sort of people, the people who are really doing stuff, is they're kind of glad there's been a pullback here because so many of them were just so in demand for media, for quotes, for shows, going to things. And now that it's cooled off a little bit, a lot of them tell me, this is great, we're going to get back to work now. And we've seen a lot of that. People like Dan Larimer of EOS has been just putting out tremendous amount of work at EOS, which is one of my favorite cryptocurrencies at the moment. And Vitalik Buterin is working like crazy on Ethereum, as are many, literally millions of people working in this ecosystem now. So it's totally growing. There's still a lot of capital in the space. We still have over $250 billion market cap for the cryptocurrency market cap. I haven't looked at numbers for investment this year, but I know that at the end of the fourth quarter of last year, there was more money put into ICOs, initial coin offerings, than IPOs, initial public offerings on Wall Street. And ICOs didn't exist until about 2 years ago. So all within 2 years, it already became bigger than Wall Street. So this is not going away by any stretch of the imagination. The price of some of these things could go down further. I would be very happy to see Bitcoin below 5,000. I'd be happy to see Ethereum below 250, 200 even. I'd love to see that. I'd like to, Bitcoin Cash is down now close to 600. I'm pretty happy about that. If it went under 500, I'd be buying a lot. EOS is now down to under $6. I recommended it at 50 cents, but it went to about $15 about 2 months ago. So I'm happy about this drop because I actually took my own advice on your show that on the last video that we did, and I took a lot of profits in December and January, which were the peaks. And so now I'm in a position to be buying back in, and it's not slowing down whatsoever. In fact, if you go to any cryptocurrency conference, you'll be amazed. It's like being around the internet in 1996 or 1997. The amount of people, the amount of buzz, the amount of excitement about what they're going to be building, what they are building, you just can't even top right now. There's no other space like it. And no, it's not going away. If anything, it's going to be massive in the next couple of years.
Well, Jeff, I have some of the same issues with my listener base who tend to be partial to the resources, and they're not always that open-minded about cryptos. Your listener base is much the opposite, and to your benefit has done exceedingly well last year, in a year that you pointed out might be the best year ever for the appreciation of the cryptocurrencies. But we have both remained very open-minded and willing to embrace both gold and cryptos. I don't want to focus too much, but I'd love to get your take on gold and silver and those markets at this point, which are building nice bases. They're looking like they're ready to take off, but they haven't taken off yet, and people have kind of forgotten about them.
Yeah, to me, and I've said this, I think I said it on our last interview when I said I was selling Bitcoin to buy gold. I actually was, and silver as well. And the reason that I think it's so beautiful right now, a beautiful moment in time for those of us who got into crypto, especially a couple months ago, was you have the cryptos trading at crazy valuations. Even at 20,000, Bitcoin, that's too high for where Bitcoin is currently when you look at the total usage across the world, when you look at all the problems related to it, all the attacks that are not only happening by government, but will come from governments. There's a lot of risk there. And to have Bitcoin up above $300 billion market cap, to have the entire space hitting $800 billion, and a lot of these coins are absolute garbage crap. Really, there's not more than probably 10 or 20 that are pretty real, and the rest get really sketchy really fast after that. So, but the total market cap of the whole thing was almost $1 trillion just 2 months ago. And to me, that was way ahead of where it should have been. In fact, I was not expecting that. When I was asked about what Bitcoin's price would hit in 2017, in 2016 when it was around $800, I said around $3,000. It ended up hitting $20,000. It's currently around $7,000. So I was in the ballpark now, but I was not expecting that massive spike. And a lot of that spike was caused by the amount of money printing going on by the Federal Reserve and all central banks across the world. And we've seen that everywhere, including the stock market. We've seen the price of everything rising because of that. But it did need a pullback. And now that we've had the pullback, as I mentioned, it was such a perfect time. I was so happy to be selling Bitcoin at $17,000, $18,000, $19,000 and buying gold at $1,200, $1,250. Numbers that are, like, to me, just seems way too low. And I haven't checked the price of silver today, but I think, around 15 is last I looked, something along those lines. And I was like, oh man, this is like a total bargain. I can't believe how the precious metals have been left out of this like I mentioned, almost everything has been in a bull market. Real estate, stock markets, bonds, cryptocurrencies, art, pretty much name it, and it has. And the precious metals have done very little. So it's just the opportune time to be taking some of those profits and moving them into the precious metals. And as you know, Colin, we started off in 2010, the dollar vigilante, with our tagline, surviving and prospering during and after the dollar collapse. And I said that dollar collapse would probably happen by the year 2020 or the end of the decade, and I think we're still on track for that. And a big focus of our newsletter was just getting people into precious metals. And still to this day, we have the majority of our portfolio in precious metals and precious metals related stocks. The other portion is in cryptocurrency, and I think we only recommend 10 or 15% of a total portfolio be in cryptos. Now, of course, if you listened to us 3 or 4 years ago, that 10% would turn into 10,000% very easily with the gains. But my point being that I still consider gold and silver that your average person who does not want to take massive risks should own more precious metals than they do cryptocurrencies. And that's because cryptocurrencies are still very young, still very volatile. We don't know what's going to happen in many cases. In fact, some of these, Bitcoin could be gone 3 years from now. It could be taken over by a brand new crypto that comes out of nowhere, and we're tracking them at our newsletter. It also, the governments could do really damage a lot of these things by making it illegal across the world, really going after anyone caught with it. Things like that, and they probably will do stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of volatility in this space, but to not have any is also crazy, in my opinion. So if you're a person out there and you're a gold or silver bug, and you've got all of your assets in gold and silver, that to me is a little risky as well. Because, well, first of all, we already know gold got confiscated in the USSA 85 years ago to the day, just 3 days ago on April 6th, that the governments will confiscate that as well. They can also tax it. The biggest enemy of humanity is the government. It's a mafia. It's an extortion racket. It's a criminal organization that steals from us. And most people, for some reason, sort of accept it. I guess after years or decades of government indoctrination camps or whatever it is, most people kind of think it's legitimate for some reason. It's absolutely not. It's a criminal organization. One of the great things about cryptos is they can't really steal your crypto. They can put you in jail if they think you've got some crypto, but if you don't give them your private keys, they can never actually get your cryptocurrency. And that's very valuable. That's incredibly important. And not to mention, if you want to do things with your gold and silver, to do those in today's day and age, if you want to buy something in China with gold, good luck. I don't even know if it's possible shipping it over there. I don't know if the government would stop it, would tax it, would confiscate it. I don't even know what the rules are, but I know it's not as easy as sending a Bitcoin to China, which takes 2 seconds and costs almost nothing. So for people out there who have all their money in precious metals, they should definitely be looking at cryptocurrencies, and especially now with them down about 65% off their highs. I think it could go down a little further, but not a lot, maybe 10 or 20% further, maybe even down 75% or 80% from their highs. But to own none right now and not be buying, to me, is absolute insanity, because these are not going away. And we should mention, too, there's a lot of cryptocurrencies coming out, very legitimate ones, that are going to be backed by gold and silver, which will make a lot of the problems with gold and silver a lot easier. Things like transportation. If you have a token that's just a cryptocurrency and it's backed by 1 ounce of silver in a vault that you trust, and of course, who do you trust? That's a whole other question. But if it's the one that you generally think is okay and your silver is actually there, you can have cryptocurrencies for that now. So that all of a sudden, if you want to buy $1 million worth of something in China with silver, it's very easy with a silver-backed cryptocurrency. And there's numerous ones coming out right now. So again, for those who don't own any, you should start looking into it. This is the future, absolutely the future, and it's not going away. A lot of people might say, oh, this is a big government scam to get everyone into a one world currency. Well, there's thousands of cryptocurrencies, and a lot of them have privacy features that you can never find out who owns it, where it is, or anything like that. So there's people out there working on these things. We're very aware of what the governments are trying to do. And in fact, cryptocurrencies are a complete retaliation and sort of a response to what they're doing by taking the power of money and banking out of their hands.
Jeff, if the gold and silver itself is cheap, then I know that your sentiment's the same as mine, that the gold and silver stocks are super cheap right now. Ed Bugos has been a huge help for not just your direct audience, but quite a few people, including myself, just looking at what the best ways are to play this. There's many ways. One of them, of course, is buying these stocks on the open market. Most of them do trade in Canada, which happens to be home to most of the resource stocks around the world. I'll also note that something you're very familiar with, Jeff, is private placements, something that we do a lot here at Palisade Global. And as I do on many of my shows, I'll throw out, feel free to email me at colin@palisadeglobal.com if you're ever interested just in learning about a little bit more how that works, financing companies directly. Jeff, what's your feeling once the gold and silver market picks up from watching this in the past on just the kinds of returns that can be made? Is this something along the lines of what your listener base experienced from the cryptos last year?
I don't know if we'll ever see returns like what we've seen from when I got into Bitcoin at $3 and it hitting $20,000. That's pretty extreme. And we also recommended Ethereum around $2 and it hit about $1,000. Now there is some stocks in the past that have done very similar, especially like you say, Colin, if you buy into the private placements. And I've gone through numerous sort of bull markets, or at least short-term bull markets in the precious metals markets. As you know, Colin, I started up Canada's largest financial website, stockhouse.com, in 1993, and right around then, that was like a heyday for precious metal stocks. Back then, there was Diamond Fields, which was Robert Friedland, who later became a friend of mine. Now he's multi-billionaire because of Diamond Fields. It went from a few pennies to, I forget how much, but anyway, it was like billions and billions of dollars. And then there was also Bre-X, which turned out to be a scam, but that went from 10 cents to about $250 or more. It turned out to be a scam, so it went down to zero eventually. But there was a number that just did incredibly well around that time. And I used to invest in some of them, and especially into private placements. Not as much back then, because I was kind of a broke internet kid. I was just starting my internet company at the time, but I was paying attention to a lot of these things. And then I guess the next sort of big bull market that I saw in the precious metals was right around that 2004, 2005. Maybe even 2006 a little bit, sort of a period. And I already knew people like Ed Bugos at the time, who I started working with at the Dollar Vigilante, but we hadn't started the Dollar Vigilante then. And I was just traveling the world and trading stocks and things like that. And I got into numerous private placements around then. I remember one was, oh man, I'm almost forgetting the names now. It's been so long. OSCO, OSK, does that ring a bell? Anyway, it was like a big one that was in Ontario, and I bought into the private placement around 10 or 25 cents, and it went to about $10 or $20. Numerous other ones like that. And for your audience, or my audience who might be watching this as well, who doesn't know about private placements, buying a private placement is like doubling up your money. It's actually more than doubling up your money. It's like getting a lottery ticket on your investment. So when you buy into a private placement on some of these gold stocks, let's say the gold stock's trading at $1, quite often they offer the private placement below the price. So let's say it's at 90 cents. You're already getting a 10% bargain there. Quite often, depending on the market, they'll give a half warrant or even a whole warrant, or sometimes even more, but a whole warrant, which gives you the option to buy another one at that price in the future. So if you buy it, and let's say the stock goes to $3, you've already made 200% gain on your, over 200% on your 90-cent investment, but you also have another share that you never put any capital into that you can now buy for 90 cents and just sell it immediately if you want at $3 for another 200% gain. So you're really doubling your money or even more because you're really not even putting any money to risk to get that. So I've said this in the past and numerous times that if you're going to be investing in precious metals stocks, that's by far the best way to do it. And I know, Colin, that's a huge focus of what you do and a big focus of what Ed does as well, but we haven't been doing it as much lately. There hasn't been that many financing that I've seen that Ed's been going through, but I've been saying to Ed actually just recently, I said, we got to start getting into some of these financings now and loading up on some of these warrants because Ed believes, and I also believe, but he believes even stronger because he's this is what he focuses on is the gold market, the gold stocks, and the overall economy and the financial markets. And he says they're going to take off soon. So I said to Ed, well, if so, let's find a bunch of private placements right now so we can get some warrants.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree with you more. Same thing as the cryptos. Once it starts to move, you're chasing it up, and you always wish that you had bought at the bottom. So I think that that's exactly where we are, and hopefully in the next few months here we start to see the gold price move and the gold stocks as well. Jeff, I want to thank you for coming back on the program for probably the 10th time at this point and being a huge supporter of Palisade, having me down at the conference speaking to your audience. It was a pretty amazing experience when I got up on stage there and looked down in front of me at about 500 faces looking up and having the opportunity to present our ideas on private placements and on the resource sector and gold. So that was a really cool experience, and hopefully I get the opportunity to come back there again. Jeff, really appreciate you coming back on the program.
Yeah, thank you very much, Colin. For anyone out there watching, if you want to get our newsletter, just go to dollarvigilante.com/subscribe, and you can sign up. It's less than $30 a month for the newsletter, and we've actually had over hundreds of percent gains the last few years, not even including the cryptocurrencies. With the cryptocurrencies, we've had 3,000% gain last year. Or just check us out on YouTube at Dollar Vigilante. And as Colin mentioned, every year we have our event in Acapulco called Anarchapulco. You can check that out. Tickets will be going on sale for that soon, Colin. We've already got a huge lineup that you won't even believe next year. We're going to go even bigger next year, so looking forward to it, and hopefully you can make it back down again.
Think you understand the junior mining sector and you think that the participants in the mining sector, junior mining sector, are good people and kind people, hit the bid.
How violent that term could be, it actually could be quite violent. It could be a rip your face off uranium rally.
And the world is always going to need raw materials. It's going to need copper and gold and nickel and so forth.
Totally destabilized. Hey, Troll, did you hear what's going on in Yemen?